For everyone who is now joining, we're just going to wait for just another minute as everyone continues to filter in to the webinar. So we'll get started in just a minute. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is our Class of 2025 College Application Process webinar. So I first just wanted to introduce all of us. I'm Sarah Reeder. I'm the College and Career Readiness Counselor, and with me is Madeline Martin and Kate McGinnis. They are the two school counselors. Ms. Martin has last names from L through Z, and Ms. McGinnis has last names from A through K. So I'm sure you've been working with them quite closely over the past few years, and now we're excited to all work together to help your children get over the finish line and figure out their next steps for college. So let's go ahead and get started. And this is being recorded, so if you need to go back and refer to it later, you are more than welcome to do that. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about is what the seniors should be doing right now. The first and most important step is to finalize that college list. So we know that sometimes college lists change a little bit throughout the fall, and that's absolutely fine. But we do want to have a pretty solidified college list at this point. And if it's not solid yet, that's okay. But really within the next week or two, that's really the step that most seniors should be taking. When we talk about finalizing the college list, we really are talking about having a diverse list, one that includes not just reach schools, but also match schools and safety schools. And so for those types of schools, you want to make sure that you have some schools on that list where a student is overqualified academically or matches the academic qualifications for the school. That's really the healthiest way to form this college list. We want students applying to a broad range of schools, including reach schools for them, but we don't want them only applying to reach schools, because when those acceptances start rolling in, we want to make sure that students are getting some acceptances and that they aren't really anxious for the next 3 or 4 or 5 months as they wait for those college decisions. The next step is to complete the college applications, being mindful of the deadlines. The earliest deadlines are coming up in October. So there are some early decision deadlines of October 15th. And then finally, to attend a small group meeting with me. I've been doing those since last week. Now, this would only be for students who did not already attend one of the workshops with me that I did in the summer. So we had a lot of students attending the workshops in the summer, which was wonderful. But then everybody else is going to get that same information in these small group sessions. At those small group sessions, we are matching the Common App to Naviance. We're making sure that the teachers have received the letter of recommendation request through Naviance, and we're talking through the different parts of the application. So it is really important that students attend those meetings. Now, of course, if students need additional help beyond that small group, they're always more than welcome to reach out to any one of us. And for the first few weeks of school, while the other counselors are working still on scheduling and all sorts of transition issues with students, I am available to help out with that college process. So any students, after they do that small group, if they want to schedule time one-on-one with me, I'm more than happy to help them finalize that college list or work through any issues within the college application itself. And then the last thing on this slide is to attend the representative visits at New Hope-Solebury. We're very fortunate to have a lot of college reps come to our campus every fall. And those reps that come are typically the ones that actually read the students' applications first. They're what they call the first reader of the college app. That's really important because it allows them to put a face to the name and to answer any questions that the student might have that's specific to their own application. This is a really great way to get to know the representative, and it's not just local colleges that come. We always have University of Miami and Boston University and a lot of other schools that are much farther away. So it's definitely important for students to check out that list. It's available on Naviance. And if you just go under what's new, you'll see all the different schools that are coming and the day that they're coming. They start next week. All students have to do is just register for it. The only reason we have them register is so that we know that students are planning to attend, so that we don't cancel the visit if nobody's planning to visit with that specific rep. We also do this during lunch and learn. So students do not have to miss class for this. But I do want students to be mindful of the fact that if they are applying to a college or university who is coming to our school and they don't take the time to introduce themselves and to show that they are really genuinely interested in the school, that doesn't look great for them. So we really want students to take advantage of those representative meetings and have those important conversations with those reps. Okay, next slide. All right, the college essay. We've talked about the college essay quite a bit. So students received information about the college essay last year in their English 11 courses. And then this year in the English 12 courses, they're doing some revision part of the process. We also did 2 different college essay workshops in the summer that a lot of students attended too. So the reason that the college essay is so critical is because this is one of the few times in the college application where colleges get an opportunity to see a little bit of the applicant's personality beyond all the numbers, the grades, the actual transcript, the test scores, and we really want students to take advantage of that college essay. Some schools will say that it's optional. We don't consider it optional. We definitely say take advantage of it if at all possible. It is a requirement for any schools that are on the common application to fill out that portion of it. So if students have not already gotten a topic, they need to be in that process very seriously at this point. So College Essay Guy has amazing brainstorming exercises, and they also have, that website has a lot of support for every stage of the essay process. Students, like I said, will also receive support from the English teachers. And again, they're welcome to come and see me if they want to talk through that essay or even just share their essay with me to get some feedback. I'm happy to do that as well. I did want to point out that there's a difference between the Common App essay, which is typically called the personal statement, and supplemental essays. So this time of year, some students, especially students who are applying to really selective colleges and universities, might feel a little bit inundated with the number of essays that they actually have to write during this process. It's easy to assume that there's only that one essay, just the big Common App essay. But in fact, a lot of colleges now also require supplemental essays. They're typically shorter, around 250 words. So that's a short essay, but they are very important. If a college is asking for a supplemental essay, that means that it matters a whole lot because they don't have to ask for any supplemental essays. So if they're asking for it, it means that they really are looking very carefully at those. So the supplemental essays are typically a chance to share more about your personality or to talk specifically about why you want to attend that individual university or perhaps join a specific program within that university. So again, College Essay Guy has amazing resources for that as well. And students are always welcome to come and talk to me about the supplements too. All right, so a few essential resources that we just want parents to be aware of the names of and what they actually do. So the Common Application is the official application for the vast majority of colleges and universities. It does make the application process drastically more efficient for the students. So within the Common App, which all students will create an account for with me if they haven't already done so, there's an actual Common App tab. They fill that tab out one time, and then they add the different schools to it, and it goes to all of those different schools. But they also have a specific college section for each individual school that they fill out to. So again, that's what I'm going over in those small groups. But if you hear the term Common App, that's what it's referring to. Naviance is our online platform. That is what we use as both a college search resource and how we send all of our high school materials that are required through the application process. We do want to mention, this is not good timing because of our webinar, we know, but just today we discovered that our district and Naviance are having a technological issue that Naviance is working out on their end. So we're hoping that it's resolved by tomorrow or maybe the following day. But if anyone logs on during or after this webinar and it says that you can't log on, that's actually why. So it is being resolved and it will be fixed very soon. But we will be using Naviance this year to send all of those materials. And then SCORE is just another college search tool that students do have access to through our school district. There are a lot of virtual tours available on SCORE. And so that's really helpful if students are applying to schools that are much farther away and they can't get out there for a visit. The SRAR is the self-reported academic record. This is something that has really become very popular by large universities over the past few years. Its purpose is to expedite the application process for students. And again, this is for schools that are taking on thousands and thousands of applications every year. And what it does is it allows the student to enter in everything from their transcript in one very easy to read format for the colleges and universities, so that they're kind of comparing apples to apples. And the reason that that is so important to mention is that the SRAR is not typically part of the application. It is something that is either emailed to students afterwards, or sometimes it shows up like in their portal. Once you apply to a school, you get a login for a portal. Sometimes it will pop up there. So we just want students to be aware of that. And again, we give a lot of reminders about all of these things throughout the fall. So this will not be the only time that students are hearing us talk about that. And then finally, we have our transcript request form. That helps us streamline the process so that we know exactly when a student has applied to a school and when they're ready for us to send along the whole packet of materials that we send, which includes the school profile, the transcript, several different forms, and all of the letters of recommendation. All right, and then some key deadlines to be aware of. So early action and early decision, they are coming up. Early decision is a binding agreement. It's a contract that you sign, the student signs, and the counselor signs. Basically, what it says is that if a student is accepted to their early decision school, they have to immediately rescind their applications from all other colleges. And it means that they can't accept any of those, acceptances that may come through at that point. It also means that you really can't be comparing financial aid packages. So early decision is a very big commitment. You have to know that if you are accepted to your dream school, you will go there no matter what. So that's important to understand. Early action is not binding. So if a school offers early action, we absolutely encourage all students to take advantage of it because it allows them to find out their decisions much earlier. We do ask that every student leaves 2 weeks between submitting an application and the actual deadline. So in all the small groups that I've been running, I've been saying whatever the deadline is, like let's say it's November 1st, subtract 2 weeks from that. That's actually when you want to submit your college application because the process isn't over at that point. At that point, that's when we get started with gathering up all the school materials and sending all of those off. And students will have to send their standardized test scores at that point too. So again, whatever the deadline is, just subtract 2 weeks from that and then you'll be fine. You'll have lots of wiggle room then. So rolling and regular deadlines are important to be aware of because if it's a rolling admissions school, it means that they will accept applications up until the time the class is filled. But that's not always a consistent date. You don't know when that date is going to be necessarily. So the earlier, the better. And if you are applying to a school like Penn State, which has an early action deadline, it's still helpful to apply earlier than that, as early as possible, to make sure that you get into the spot that you want, to the campus that you want, and the program that you want, and all of that, because it is very competitive as it goes on. So it gets more competitive as it gets closer to that class being filled. And we also just want students to be mindful that we do need to be in the office to process all of these materials. So right before winter break, the 12/15, we would say, is the latest date that we want to be receiving transcript requests, because if we need to follow up with teachers or anything like that for letters of recommendation, that gives us the time that we need to do that. We don't want any students to be in a situation where suddenly it's New Year's Eve and they realize that they've got a deadline the next day and we're not in the office to be able to process, all that paperwork for them. So just some dates to be mindful of. Okay, and this is my last slide before I kick it off to anybody else. So in Naviance, and again, this is what I'm going over in the small groups or in the workshop. So students have this, or they'll be getting it later this week if they haven't met with me quite yet. They're going to be maintaining the list that's called Colleges I'm Applying to. That list is really important because it's obviously all the schools that they're planning to apply to, but it also has information that the teachers see, including the application deadline that they're aiming for. It's really important that they make sure that the deadlines that are entered in there are accurate, because we don't want a teacher thinking, oh, I've got until November 15th for that deadline, and then actually the student is applying, early decision, and it's an October 15th deadline. So we just want to make sure that that information is accurate. We also do submit a letters of recommendation through Naviance, and so the request has to go through Naviance as well. So even if a student has already spoken to their teachers, which we're hoping at this point they all have, about writing the letters of recommendation, at this point they do need to submit that request to them via Naviance. And again, I'm doing that in the small groups and I did it in the workshop, so students will get assistance with that. They do not need to submit requests to their counselors because between the three of us, and especially Ms. Martin and Mrs. McGinnis, they write letters for all of the students. So you automatically get one. The only thing that they need is that brag sheet, which students were supposed to do last spring. All right, I will kick it off to, I think, Ms. Martin now.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Reader. So perfect segue, because letters of recommendations. You complete the student brag sheet. So it was due June 1st in Canvas. If you have not done so already, you need to email Ms. McGinnis or myself with your brag sheet ASAP, so we can get that completed for you by your deadline. Noted though, if you do not have it and submit it, then we can't write your recommendation letter. So please do that for us. Also, we also asked you last year as well, request letters of recommendations from your teachers. So at this point, you should ask them personally, then they will submit the Naviance, you will submit the Naviance request, and then your teacher will upload it. And this is where you will show your wonderful social skills and write a thank you note. And this is the professional skills that we talk about and we hope students will do, because teachers really appreciate that because they take their time. It's a lot of time to do a lot of recommendation letters. Also, please give them at least 2 to 3 weeks. Like I said, teachers are very busy, so they need just ample time to get that done for you. And then optional, so an outside recommender, this is the only type that would be requested through the Common App. So say you might be an MBIT student and you're looking for, or you have a teacher from MBIT, you would use the Common App or have them directly send it to the college instead of Naviance. Okay, so we also mentioned earlier about sending transcripts. So after each application, you must submit a transcript form to guidance. And Mrs. Park, it's a Google form. You have to send a separate one for every college you complete. Please allow at least 2 weeks. There's a link form on your Canvas page. Mrs. Reader does go through this as well in her small groups, but just to reiterate, there's a series of tasks that must be completed to send the materials. And with each material, so we send your transcripts. Mrs. Park also sends the school profile. She sends over the letters of recommendation and the secondary school report. So all of this goes over to the schools. And then we just, within 10 days of receipt of the request form. So just give us some time. As long as you submit your stuff to us at an appropriate time, we will have it completed for you. And this is what the request form, it's a Google form. So it's pretty easy. Takes a couple minutes if you do it. And then for each school, you will need to complete this. Okay, test scores. So some students may take or retake the SAT or ACT their senior year. The student must send their scores directly over to the, the college requires SAT scores, so the student has to directly send it over to them through either College Board or the ACT. It's pretty easy. Once the scores pop up, there's about like a little button you can just upload and tell what school you're going to. And many colleges have made standardized test scores optional. So this is really good if we're depending on maybe you didn't score so well again. There we have fairtest.org, but a lot of schools also, when the reps come in the fall, they will tell you optional or not. So, and these during when we have these reps visits come in the fall, it's important if maybe you're not doing test optional, it's an opportunity for you to showcase your skills that are not in test form. So you can just tell them verbally, like your academics, what you've done, extracurriculars, that sort of thing. So that also looks really good. Okay, so key dates to remember. So the SATs, the last dates for seniors that we recommend you get in October 5th and November 2nd. So you can register online. They are digital SATs, but it's very easy. Just Google College Board SATs and then pops up the dates and you just click register and sign in. So pretty easy. Same thing for the ACTs. FAFSA. That opens, excuse me, sometimes say it like FAFSA, and the F gets you. So that opens October 1st. We have the next slide I'll briefly over, but that's really important to know. FAFSA's changed last year, so it's a little different, and we really recommend parents to watch the webinars to get an idea on what's happening with FAFSA. I'm just going to say it wrong. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Reader. So we also have community scholarships January and February. They're uploaded in Naviance. We also have some the local ones on Canvas. College Board does have scholarships as well if you Google, but just it's important to go through them. Sometimes they're third-party ones, so just make sure you go through and look the validity of them. But they're usually all pretty good. And then May 1st is National Decision Day, so we usually ask students to wear their shirt, come to guidance, and we like to celebrate them. So more information will be out closer to May 1st. And then, as I was mentioning, the financial aid webinar. So this will be presented from Penn State University, a financial aid rep. And this is during the morning hours, so 10:45. This will be live. We'll also be recording it and posting it up on Canvas so you can view this at home if you're not able to view it at 10:45 in the morning. But like I said, it's types of financial aid and how FAFSA has changed over the last year. So just really important to check this out if there's any questions there. So I think that might be it. It is Ms. McGinnis. Take it
All
away.
right, I'll take it over. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about a couple resources that we want to make sure we provide for our families and students. The first one is the Bucks County Community College Regional College Fair. So this is actually hosted by the Pennsylvania Association of College Admission Counseling. So many schools from the state of Pennsylvania will be here. It's October 16th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And again, it's held at the Newtown campus of Bucks County Community College. So you can register for this event at striveair.com, and then we can also
just so you know, I'm really sorry. I'm going to get that into the chat in a second.
Okay, perfect.
I'm having an issue loading the website. So I will be right with you in the chat with all of these registration links. I promise.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And again, we are very fortunate to have so many college reps come to our school, but just in case there's a school that your child is applying to that isn't able to make it to our school, it's a really helpful and beneficial way just to go to this college fair. Many times when the college reps either come into our building or if you attend a college fair, you know, they sometimes scan a QR code or they fill out an index card and they kind of write down their information, maybe some programs that they're interested in. And for many schools, they take into consideration how many points of interest a child has shown. So whether you've gone there for a tour, you've gone to a community fair like this, you know, you've visited when the people come into New Hope High School and talk. So, you know, it's another really valuable resource. And then the next one that I wanted to share with you, Ms. Martin, if you don't mind just going to the next slide, is the NACAC Philadelphia College Fair. So this is actually held at the Convention Center on November 2nd. It's from 11 to 3, and it's hosted again this is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. So we're going to see a lot more colleges and universities that are represented at this event. There's hundreds of schools, and then you definitely need to register for this event. So we'll get that a link into the chat in just a second, but we'll definitely send that out. And if you have any questions after the webinar, you know, somehow you didn't get a chance to register tonight, you can just let us know and we can send that out to you as well. The next slide's really, you know, how important is senior year? Well, it's very important. When we send our students' transcripts to the schools that they're applying to, what the schools are going to see is the cumulative GPA from their grades 9, 10, and 11. So what our transcript looks like would be the final grade that they received in each class that they took, but it also lists the classes that they're taking their 12th grade year. So Miss Martin and I have already kind of sent out a blast to all seniors, just reminding them that their schedule right now should be set for the year. Every year we have a couple seniors that sometimes come to us once that semester changes over in January and asks about maybe dropping or changing a course for the second semester. We really try to err on not doing that. And the reason being is because when you are applying to a college, we show them the classes you're taking their senior year. And then if they change it, we actually have to write a letter to every single school that they're applying to stating why the student is changing the classes that they said that they were going to take the beginning of their 12th grade year. So the less attention we can kind of draw to that, the better. But we just want to make sure that that student schedules right now look good to go, and that that we can send those transcripts out. After the first semester, which typically happens in mid to late January, we send out the first semester grades. So if your child is taking a half semester course, for example, Intro to Philosophy or Health 1, it's going to show up as their final grade. But if they're taking a year-long course, you'll see their first and second marking period grade. So it's really important, again, that like your senior year, that they're still going strong and that they're still showing the same rigor that they've shown up until now. And then the other thing that we're going to say, we wanted to share out, is that at the end of the year, we do have to send final transcripts to the school. And schools do have the right to rescind acceptances based on those 12th grade grades. So if there is a student who kind of had that nosedive or a situation where their grades weren't where they kind of were on the same trajectory as their 9th or 11th grade, that can happen. So we just want to make sure that students take their senior year as serious as all the other years. And closing thoughts, I know Mrs. Reeder had shared this already with, looking at those safety and secure schools and reaches, but we just really want to make sure no matter where that school is on the list, that you love your list. Sometimes I meet with students in the past and they have a couple on their list that they really weren't even interested in. And that's why we want to make sure that every single school you're excited about when you see her, if you're accepted, and so we would just want to make sure you love your entire list. Managing stress. So really, we recommend scheduling specific times to work on applications. A lot of seniors have late arrival or study halls, early dismissals. If you can just set times, even maybe Sunday mornings and things like that to just help with the application process, that helps lower a lot of stress. The one thing we wanted to mention is not to stress out or panic if you get a mass email. So often what happens is if you apply to a school, which is like kind of the first step, sometimes they send a mass email to you saying like, well, we don't have this, and this, meaning like they don't have their letter of recommendation from their counselor. They don't have their transcript yet. And oftentimes it's just because either the college hasn't uploaded it yet into the system, or the student hasn't filled out that transcript request form yet from our site, and we just need to make sure we get it to them. So we don't want you to panic. If you have any questions, please pop in. I know Mrs. Reeder and Mrs. Park has helped many students who kind of have gotten that email and then they kind of explain why that came through. The other thing we wanted to say is that colleges do appreciate when students take the initiative to reach out with questions. So, making sure that you're leading the communication and that it's coming from you. You can call. I mean, I can't even tell you how many colleges and universities, they have people that pick up right away when you call the admissions office and ask questions. If they don't have the answer, they'll get back to you. Or again, you can always use email as a form of communication. And also don't miss important emails, especially we had already said the SHRAR. You have to check your email every day. You do not want to miss that opportunity to self-report your grades, because a lot of those big universities use that as a way to quickly get your information into the system so that they can make decisions about acceptance right away. The last thing we wanted to say is just that you can do this. It won't be long until you're getting your acceptance letters. Whenever I meet with the juniors, when we do our junior meetings and we start kind of school shopping, I always say it's a two-way street. As much as you want schools to, send you those acceptance letters, those schools also want you to pick them to apply to. So just have some fun. And if you need any help, we're all here to to offer assistance.
And on that note, I just wanted to jump in and just reiterate exactly what Mrs. McGinnis just said about colleges really appreciating the students reaching out. Because if you think about it, 1 year from today, all these seniors are going to be off at, their selected college or university. And at that point, all communication will go only to them. So this is a really great year to start practicing all of those skills of independence. And we are still here every step of the way to provide support for them and help with anything that they need. But them taking the initiative is really great. I don't know if you can hear, my dog just brought in a squeaky toy, which is really great timing. Sorry about that. But on that note though, I wanted to mention the Lunch and Learn availability. Students can stop in during Lunch and Learn, but that financial aid webinar, the reason that it's scheduled at that random 10:45 in the morning time was actually not random at all. We scheduled it then because we want our seniors to be able to attend that if they're interested in applying for federal aid. So the webinar is absolutely for parents as well, and we will record it and send it out to all of you. But if you want the student to be aware of that process, please encourage them to attend that webinar live. We're going to try to reserve some space in the library, so any students who want to watch it during that Lunch and Learn session can do so then. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us if you need anything. Mrs. Park in our office is an amazing resource too when it comes to checking to make sure that documentation has gone out or any questions regarding transcripts. She does a fabulous job of getting things sent out very, very quickly for students. So always leave yourself plenty of time. Communicate with us. Don't assume that we know what's going on with an application. We don't even find out from a college or university if a student's been accepted. So please do communicate with us, because we want to be able to celebrate with students and we want to be able to support students if they don't get good news. But along the way, if you're feeling overwhelmed in any way, please, please, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to help with this process, and we love helping with this process. So please use us as a resource. So at this point, I believe that we can open it up for any questions in the chat. You should be able to type in the chat and send it. It will just, not everybody will see it. It will only go to the three of us, I believe, and then we'll be able to read out those questions and answer. If you have any that are very specific to your own child, then of course, just reach out to us individually. But if any one wants to ask any questions that pertain to everyone, please, by all means. The first question was, can parents get the list of representatives coming to New Hope-Solebury? Absolutely. Mrs. Park actually does send them out on a regular basis. I actually thought that she did send one out recently, but if that didn't go out yet, I'll double check on that. So we'll make sure that that gets sent out to parents soon. Students can see it in Naviance. But yes, I'll make a note to make sure that that goes out to parents this week as well. Just waiting a minute to see if any other questions pop in. Okay, so there's a question about the SAT on October 5th. And so the question was, can a student still apply for like a November 1st application deadline? Will the scores be available? So typically College Board takes about 3 weeks to release those scores, a little bit less than that typically. So they should be available for that November 1st deadline. But I would say the nice thing about the Common App is that it asks a question like, are you going to report your scores? And do you have any upcoming test sessions? So you can apply even earlier than November 1st and just say, yes, taking the October 5th test, and then they'll know and they'll kind of like earmark that so they can return back and look at that application once those scores are in. Now, there are occasional schools that will say, no, we need everything in by that deadline and we won't look at scores that come in after. That's a little bit rare, but usually they're very public about saying that. So it would be listed somewhere, that students would see. But in general, yes, it's no problem to take that October 5th SAT date.
We had another question. How important is it to visit the school in person? So like Ms. McGinnis was saying, have fun with it, love your school. That's something going in person really determines the fit. So you might love what you see online and the virtual tours, but when you get on campus, maybe it's too big for you. Maybe it's just the atmosphere is not what you think it is. So we highly recommend to get the chance to tour. If you have fall break, if you have spring break time, if you have like a family vacation, just even if you're taking like a drive somewhere and you stop by and see a university, just to get a chance just to get that feel and see what you might need.
Some students have also taken like virtual tours, not the ones that are offered through Naviance and SCORE, but actually that are hosted from the school itself. And if they still feel as though it's like a good fit, like Miss Martin said, I've had a couple students who have gotten accepted to a school and then they use their spring break or sometime like in March or February to actually go visit the school for the first time technically in person. Ms. Reader, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so some schools track demonstrated interest, other schools do not. Now, within demonstrated interest, if a school is tracking that, they do want a student to visit in person. However, they cannot expect a student to travel really far to visit their school. That has all sorts of equity implications. So they would never judge against a student who can't visit the school for whatever reason. But if it's a school that is very close by and they track demonstrated interest, it could hurt the student if they don't take the time to go and visit, unless they've explained, I'm not able to for such and such reason. Now, the way that you can determine if a school tracks demonstrated interest or not is by using something called the common data set. Every college and university has a common data set, and the easiest way to find it, to be honest, is by Googling the words common data set and whatever the college or university is. It will actually come up. You have to scroll through it. It's a huge document, but if you scroll through, you'll find a list of every single element, every criterion from the admissions process and how important it is. So for demonstrated interest, sometimes it will be marked off as like not considered. So then they're not going to even know or look to see if you ever visited the school. But if a school ever says like, they do track demonstrated interest, it's highly, considered or very significant in the process, that would be a school that's definitely worthwhile to visit. Okay, I see a question about, is there a benefit in applying earlier than the deadlines? So if the October 15th is the deadline, if you apply now, does that help? So that's a great question because it does depend on the school. Overall, no. In general, if the deadline is October 15th, as long as it's in by the October 15th, it's being compared with everybody else who applies by that date. But the difference or the caveat to that would be any schools that have rolling admissions. So for instance, like a Penn State. So that again is clear on their website. If they say that they are rolling or that they start accepting applications really early, then that's usually a sign that that would be helpful to get it in even earlier than the deadline.
The next question asks about if a school says that they're test optional, are they really, or do they like count it as like a strike against the student? If a school's test optional, what typically they want you to submit it if you're close to their average or higher. And many of the reps that come to our schools say like, you want to tell us the reasons why we should accept you. You don't want to point out reasons if you're below what they're looking for. So if it's test optional and you're below that average that they're looking for, then you really shouldn't submit that. What happens is it's kind of like causing the curve to go up, because then I'm just going to say, like, let's just say it was a school that the average is a 1350 or higher SAT score. It just continues to like keep that score, that number, because anyone who has like a 1220 knows that they wouldn't submit their SAT score for that school. But anyone who is around that 1350 or higher will continue to submit it. So yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And if they say they're test optional, they really are. They really do mean that. And then a similar question was, is there any reason to submit the SAT scores if they are below the average? And the answer is generally no, unless it's very close to the average and the GPA isn't high. So if you think about it, if you're removing the test scores from the equation, you're kind of forcing the college to look only at the GPA in terms of like that number, that other big like objective number. So as long as a student has a good GPA, or at least a solid GPA, then that's probably going to be in their best interest if they're not a strong test taker. But if they don't have a strong GPA and their SAT is at least close to the college's average, then in that case, it might be better to submit. That would really be like an individualized situation, though. We're always happy to talk through those situations with students one-on-one too.
The next question is a really good one too. It's why is it important to apply to a REACH school? Students don't have to apply to a REACH school. It just sometimes what happens is, let's say a student's number one choice is actually a safety or a secure school. That's wonderful, and that happens quite often. But what we also find that may happen is that students apply to very highly selective school, meaning that their acceptance rate is 20 or 15% or less of all the students that apply there. And so when you have, 7 schools on your list that are very highly selective, it means that it's highly selective for all students that are applying. So we just want to make sure that there is a balance between REACH schools, safeties, and secure schools on your list. Applying early decision help your chance of acceptance. Mrs. Reader, you want to answer that one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, it typically does a little bit, but by how much depends on the school. So again, that resource that I was mentioning, that common data set, that's a really great resource to find out what the admission rate was for early decision versus regular decision for any given college or university. So sometimes it does help pretty significantly, but again, you really have to weigh out the pros and cons because it is a big commitment to do that. And there was a question about super scoring. Okay, so the question for super scoring was, how does it work generally? So when you super score, you yourself are not actually like piecing together the scores. The college or university is. So what happens is that the college will ask if you want to report any scores. And then it's up to you. When you go to the College Board website, you have to send in the entire test date of scores. So both of those sections, even if one of the sections is lower and you don't want that to be considered, you still have to send in the entire test date of scores. So you might be sending in 2 different test dates to a specific college or university. They would then piece it together and include the highest section for each one for you. And in terms of the October 5th SAT, you would basically need to send those scores if you want those to be considered. If you want to wait and see what the scores were, you can. Again, like most of the November deadlines are actually November 15th. So you'd still have that time to make that decision before you need, you'd be able to see it first before making that decision. If not, and it's November 1st, then you do kind of have to like take a leap of faith and see how the student feels, after taking the test. Okay. There was a question about, do we have a weighted GPA? We do have a weighted GPA. We do. So we only report weighted GPA to colleges, and that's on our school profile, so they're aware of that. Go ahead.
There's a question about if your student has special services. So generally, if your child has any accommodations, you take their document if they have a 504 or an individual education IEP, then you just take it to their it's like learning center generally, or just disability services, and they can get that accommodated in your classes. Pretty easy.
And I think the question is also then like, who do they work with in terms of like figuring out the next steps? So we do have a transition coordinator for our district. It's Mrs. Korn. So she will be involved in that process, as well as the IEP case manager. And then I'm typically involved in that as well. So there's a whole team of people then who would be supporting the student. So if you do have individual questions, definitely reach out. We definitely work closely with all of those case managers. Okay, question about ranking. We do not rank in New Hope-Solebury. We don't, I shouldn't say we don't rank. We do not report rank. And that's actually very common among school districts, especially high achieving school districts. The reason that we do not rank is because it hurts our students if we report their rank. If you think about how high achieving New Hope-Solebury is, the the average grades for a student who's, in the middle of the class, is so much higher in our district than other districts, that if they're just reporting the GPA, it really makes them shine. But if they're reporting a class rank that's like in the middle or even the lower half of the class, despite having a pretty good GPA, then that would hurt them. So we do not report class rank. We only report their weighted GPA. Now, if a student chooses to report it on the Common App, they can do so. We just don't encourage them to do that, because on all of our documents, we say that we do not share class rank. The only exception to that would be the students that are like numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the class. Then you can report that class rank, and we talk to those students about how to do that. And then how are AP test scores reported? So they're also self-reported in the Common application, and then you will eventually send those official test scores to the college or university. It's up to you whether you want to do that during the application process. There's a few highly selective schools that require them to be sent during the application process, and they would let you know if that was a requirement. But actually, overall, most schools do not require those in the application process, because they're seeing the grades that you got in your AP classes themselves on the transcript. And then when you've selected which school you want to go to, then you can send them all of the scores, because at that point, they're really just using the scores to determine whether or not you've earned credit in those classes or not at the college level. Oh, going back to class rank, where can you find out what the class rank is? We can look it up for you. It's in Sapphire. I actually don't know if students can see it on their end. I kind of doubt it, because we don't report it publicly. But anybody in the counseling office can look that up. We've already individually spoken to the students who are numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the class, because they're the ones that would most likely want to be reporting that. Yeah, so again, I've seen a few questions about that. We've already spoken to those students if they're numbers 1, 2, or 3.
There's a question about if you took an AP test and you didn't do too well. No, you do not have to report your test scores.
That's right. Yeah, anything with testing is, up to you to report or not. Oh, there was also a question about how do we get an official transcript? So that's what we send out through the guidance office. What makes it official is us sending it directly from the school to school. So anything submitted through Naviance is the official transcript. If you, for some reason, need an unofficial transcript, that's available in Sapphire. So you can see that in Sapphire. Students can also just stop in if they need like a printout of that. But again, it becomes unofficial as soon as it is given to a student. So if, every once in a while, like a coach or somebody will need an official transcript and they need a printout of it, we actually have to print it out, put our school seal on it, and then seal it in an envelope and sign over the flap to make it official again. Otherwise, once it's handed to a student, it becomes unofficial, or a family. I don't
These
see
were all
any.
great questions.
Yeah, they were. And again, please reach out to us if you have more, if you think about it after, our webinar is over and you come up with some other questions, feel free to email us at any point. Okay, I don't see any more popping in. So I think that we are all set. So thank you all so much for attending tonight. We hope that you learned some information. And again, if a student has not met with me yet, please rest assured that I am getting to them. I think that I've met with about 70% of the student body so far, but we definitely still have quite a few students to get to. So that will happen over the next week or so. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night.
Have a nice night.